Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to On the Couch with Martin Copeland. My guest today has been a friend of mine for many years. We've come through mediumship and spiritualism together, served each other's churches. She's a very good friend of mine, and at my wedding, she did us the most wonderful reading. So today I'd like to welcome to the couch Mrs. Karen Lyne-Jones. She's an officiant of the Spiritualist National Union. So good morning, Karen.
Morning, Martin.
And it's a lovely day today. I don't know what you've been doing, but because my wife's at work, I've been putting the washing out on the line for her. So it just shows I'm a modern man.
I think I need one of those.
Yeah, you've probably seen some of the interviews, and what I like to do is I'm asking some similar questions, and we change some of the questions so that the listeners, those that are watching them regularly, get an idea that no two mediums are the same, but we have some similarities. And I know that you're passionate, as all my other guests, about your mediumship and spiritualism, but could you tell us how you came into all this?
Oh, that's a good story. It was over 30 plus years ago. And do you know why I came in originally? It was because I was absolutely terrified of what I was seeing and hearing. I mean, I've been listening to some of your interviews there, and I know a lot of people say that they were aware of spirits, from a quite young age. I was. But I didn't know what to do with it. I used to hide under the bedclothes. I used to see things moved, so many incidences of spirit communication. And I suppose eventually I got used to it in a way, but never comfortable with it. And I was one day talking to my mom, and she said, I mean, I'd heard about spiritualist churches, but obviously I'd seen some movies as well where they just sit in the dark, hold hands, like most of us have, Things fly around in the dark, don't they? And my mom said, come on, there's a spiritualist church in Tamworth. And she says, I'll take you down. I didn't live with my mom at the time. I was brought up by my dad. So, obviously it wasn't something that she'd saw happening with me, to be truthful. But we went down to the spiritualist church, and I always remember that I sat right at the back. And I've told this story many, many times, because obviously I'd seen the things on the TV. I sat at the back so I could get out quickly in case the lights went out, because I was terrified of the dark. That is the truth. I was ready to go. But what brought me into it was actually the fear of what I was experiencing. I needed some knowledge. As I said, I'd started to become at ease with it. I'd started to realise exactly what it was, that I could see things other people didn't. And I just needed some help. And I've been there ever since, involved in spiritual ever since. And as I said, at the end of the service, I've got to say, I sat right at the back, but I was quite disappointed that things hadn't happened as I expected. But I went back week after week, and in 30 odd years, that somebody mentioned the other day, I was watching your one of your last things where it said about I think it was Libby, where he felt she'd come home when she went into a church, and that's exactly how I felt. I felt I'd come home. I felt I was where I belonged, where I needed to be.
We hear a lot of spiritualists say that we're not spiritualists when we first go. I mean, I went because my father passed, and it didn't take many meetings at the church for me to realise that this is what I'd wanted. Yeah,
you go back time and time again, and you just feel that's where you belong. There's a reason for being there. I mean, I was brought up like many of others in a different religion, Church of England,
but I've always been a religious person. There's a church just that way in the town, and I was the second server there. I used to wear black robes and everything. But listening to your story there, I think sometimes we don't realise that we're having a mediumistic event, because it was only as I grew older and came into spiritualism I realised what some of the scary things were that I experienced as a child. And for instance, like you, there was on many occasions there used to be a little boy standing by my bedroom window, and I had two brothers, and I'd look over and think it's not them, and then the covers had come up.
Oh yeah.
And I was like you, and I'd be baking under the covers.
I've got quite a few stories of that. First time that I mean, my daughter, my youngest daughter, can remember things right back to when she was about 2 or 3. I think my earliest memories are about 5 years old of different stuff. And I remember being at school, in the obviously the nursery school, and I sound awful, going to the toilets, and the years ago they were all, you know, the white tiles everywhere, very echoey in the toilets. And I remember going to the toilet, just going to about to sit down, and all I heard was nobody there but my name being called, like a loud whisper, and it was echoing all around this toilet. Yeah. I'll tell you something, I ran out of there with my knickers around my ankles. I couldn't get out of there quick enough. It was terrible. Yeah. But I'd had umpteen experiences. At the age of 8, I was in a very bad car accident, and I ended up in hospital for 6 months. A terrible time. My dad was in there as well, very, very poorly, and not too bad. But I was seeing things, hearing my name again being called all the time. I remember at the Christmas, I was in the children's ward for a start. Most of the children, I think I was the only one left in the ward. The other children went home for, you know, Christmas Day, and I mean, I've heard this story before where people say that they see a nurse come in, but it was a very old-fashioned nurse came into the room calling my name. I screamed the place down. And obviously they thought I was just maybe imagining things. So they decided to give me some company, and they put me on an elderly person's ward. Yeah. People passing away. Just in the corner. Yeah, so I saw many, many things, you know, and I did develop a real fear of what I was seeing and hearing. And but as I said, as I got older, I started to come to terms with it. It still frightened me, like you. I'd hide under the bedclothes. You know, I remember watching the film Sixth Sense. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yes, you were Bruce Willis, yeah.
Yeah, and it hit so many buttons for me, that did, because although obviously that was, you know, glamorized for the TV, but I'd be under the bedclothes, I'd be seeing things, I'd see so many faces, so many people, as clear as day. And yeah, my family didn't understand. There'd never been anybody quite like me. I was dragged off to the doctors at about 12 years old, and given some tablets that never did any good, but there you are. But yeah,
there's more understanding nowadays.
Oh, there is, yeah.
There popular, is. Particularly in Britain. I mean, it's getting popular all around the world, but so popular in Britain. You can, where I live now, I can walk to 3 spiritualist churches and then drive to another within 20 minutes. But you obviously got over these fears.
Well, I found home. I found the spiritualist church. It was home. People like me, people who understood me. So, yeah.
I know you work as a platform medium. And how did you begin your development once you'd stepped into the spiritualist church? How did you take that step towards developing as a medium and to understanding the things you were seeing?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, I got asked if I wanted to join a development group within the church. I've got to be. I could tell a few funny stories about that, but I won't. The one thing I did find was, I don't think at the time that, again, where I was developing, that people quite understood what I was seeing. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because I think the issue, I mean, I've spoken to you numerous times about this over the time that we've known each other, Martin, but sometimes I think people teach from their experience, not their experience, from what they've learned, what people have taught them. And to me, mediumship and the development of it is very much a natural thing, but it's also about developing the best that's in you.
Yes.
Not me teaching somebody what I've got or how I develop it. It's and I've got to be truthful, and I'm going to be totally honest. And again, many people have heard me say this before, that at times I learned how not to do it.
Many times, yeah.
Yeah.
I find I've changed my point of view as a tutor. You know, we should be developing all the time.
We never stop.
It was while I was working at the Arthur Findlay College. I'm not saying the spirit world or anything, but I had like a realization that if I wanted my students to succeed, I've got to stop telling them the way to do it. Just give them the tools to do it, and let them have their own individual mediumistic experiences, which I call IMEs now.
Yeah.
And everybody should have their individual experiences, and I don't think anybody should put them, put them down for the experiences that they're having. Within
That's right.
as long as they're being sensible with it.
I think that's where sometimes things, in the way, that I was, first went into it, I think that's where things go wrong with the medium, because they don't stretch, they don't expand then. And I think there's so much needed. People have to expand their own personality as well as their mediumship.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started developing, like most mediums, we all have, we want to see more of it, don't we? We become obsessed with going and watching other mediums working and all that kind of thing. And I think at times, obviously you get to know who tutors are of some of these mediums. And I think we had a lot of little mini me's around at the time that I started. Not me, but, obviously they sort of mimicked the tutor.
Yes.
See who taught them. And we've expanded from that now. It's so lovely to see that, people are becoming who they are, not somebody else.
Yeah, and expressing their individuality.
Yeah, I think, the gift that we have, each and every one of us, is our own individual, unique gift. And it's like you said, it's the way that they bring it out. All you can do is give them the tools. Yeah.
So you've done this developing, you started to develop. So when did you serve your first church, and did it go well?
No, that was another learning experience. I went along with the lady who was actually, whose circle I'd been in. She took me along to serve a church with her. And, well, she didn't do it actually. She sat at the back, to be truthful, at the end. And it was Birmingham Forward Church, I think it was, if I remember right. It was quite a few years ago. And I remember going in there, and it went well. Actually, it went well. I was very nervous, as we all are. It went, for the first time, it was okay. But I kept being drawn. You know what I'm saying here. Sometimes you can be drawn to people, can't you? This gentleman had come in. There wasn't many in there, but he'd come in quite late, and he'd sat right at the back. And he was looking at me a bit funny anyway. But we're drawn, aren't we?
Yeah.
And honestly, all I kept seeing, and this is so clear, all I kept seeing in front of him was a bowl of lemons. I thought, in my mind, what am I seeing a bowl of lemons for? I mean, obviously, now I know my psyche was kicking in. In the other words, it was saying, don't go there, but there you are. But I let myself be drawn there, and I said, so I've got to come to you here. I says, I don't know, I'm not seeing anybody from the spirit world, but what I'm seeing at the moment is a bowl of lemons in front of you. Off he went up in the air. He'd come in, he said, I learned from people like you, you're in league with the devil. So my bowl of lemons was probably being given to me from the spirit world as well. Don't go there, sour and bitter. So if ever I see a bowl of lemons, I look the other direction.
Stay away from it.
But it did go well. It was, and in fact, it really did. It taught me a lesson that I so desperately needed on my journey, really, because you are going to get people like that. There are ways of dealing with it, and it didn't destroy me. It unnerved me a little bit, but it taught me a lesson. And every stage of our development, Martin, as you know, is a lesson.
It is, definitely. So I know about your platform mediumship, but because you live so far away, our friendship's always been when we've met up, like you came to the wedding, you did us the reading and things like that. So are you developing any other facets of your mediumship?
Well, I think you develop all aspects, but not just with the mediumship, but my main, I love philosophy.
Yes.
I love the philosophy. Because that's an experience that we can share with everybody when we're within our... I love the Sunday Divine Services. I've got to be truthful and say that. And I love to sit with spirits and philosophize with them, if you like, really. Sometimes it comes from the spirit world. Sometimes it's from your own inspired self and your, what you've learned along the way. But the philosophy part of it is really, really... I love it. I absolutely love it.
Me too. And the mediumship... I enjoy the mediumship, but the philosophy took over for me at one point, and now I'm going back towards the healing side, which is where I started originally. But very often I go for a walk in the local beauty spots, and it's there. There's a poem. It's,
There
you know,
is, yeah.
as the man's closest to God in the garden than anywhere else on the earth. And very often when I'm out there and I'm doing a service in a couple of days and saying, what am I going to talk about? And I always get inspired in the countryside, like you say, either by the spirit world or by your higher self. So
Yeah, I remember, I don't know whether do you remember Jean Bassett?
no Gene. I knew Gene.
Yeah, I remember Jean Bassett from many, many years ago, and her philosophy was absolutely wonderful. And like you said, she could be inspired from anywhere,
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember somebody saying, give me a philosophy on curry sauce. She did. It was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
Fantastic speaker.
yeah.
No, I love the philosophy as well. I do sit for trance, but that's in my own way, not in, not public with anybody else. I just like to sit in the company of spirit.
Well, Steph and I always sat alone, but now using this media, I've opened up a home circle, and there's been up to 29 people sitting in my home circle.
Yeah, that's a good
There's
idea.
only 2 of us at home, and it's amazing how it can help you to develop. And people need to realise that you don't need to be in the company of the physical to be in the company of spirit.
That's true.
Now, I want to touch on something, a new project that you started, sadly, just before the coronavirus, and it was just starting to take off. I'd like to talk about it and the running of it. You started a small spirituality centre in Tamworth. Tell us a bit about it and how people can find information about it once we let out loose.
Once we let out, yeah. Soul to Soul Spiritual Connections. It's a totally non-denominational organisation. We are non-profit. We've not got committee, we've got founders, founding members. It is going very, very well, even before we started last May. And we run development groups, obviously services, workshops, anything else that we can sort of fit in there. It's a lovely little place in Drayton Bassett. You can find us on Facebook at Soul to Soul Spiritual Connections, and also on Messenger. You can actually join the Messenger chat, and that's how basically most of us are keeping in touch at the moment. Everybody can come onto there and have a chat and ask questions, or if there are any questions about spirit or anything else really. It's a lovely, lovely group, and I do have to say that, very spiritual group. Friends, colleagues, everybody working together, absolutely wonderful.
Have you given any thought to keeping it open on this sort of media? Because I'm working with another lady called Nicola Neal, and
we are,
and we run a divine service every Wednesday.
Yeah, we are discussing it at the moment, but as I said, this is my first time on this. I'm not computer literate, but yeah, it is something we need to do. We have been asked, and there's a lady, Veronica Jenkins. I don't know whether you know her, from Tamworth. Lovely lady. She's actually offered to help us set some stuff up and do that. So that's the next step.
It doesn't take a lot of equipment.
No.
So
it is needed, but obviously at the moment we've been keeping together with obviously the Messenger chat and everything. But we will start doing services. Hopefully, we won't be in lockdown a hell of a lot longer, but
no,
who knows?
It'd be nice if they could let us just do a little bit more. I'm not afraid of it, but I'm one of these people who thinks if we let the British public loose after all this lockup, that some of them might just go a bit crazy. And what I don't want is this, a second wave of it. We're locked down for even longer the next time. See, it'll be, I told you so. Now this time you're locked down forever.
Oh, I can imagine that. Yeah. I think that we do need a little bit more freedom, but I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah. Well, my dogs, they schnauzers and they need a trim, and they look like two. You've just seen one prior to going on there. They look like lions instead of little miniature schnauzers. And the strange thing is, the clippers have phoned me up this morning. And they can open, but you've got to walk there. You've got to go through the door. You put your dogs in a cage, take all your harnesses off. Then you've got to leave. Then they'll take your dogs. They've cut in 5 dogs a day where they used to do, 10 or 12. Yeah. They've sorted 5 time slots, and they're going to disinfect after every dog. So anyway, you're a professional medium. You're a teacher of spiritual disciplines, but you're also a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. And often, we keep in touch mostly on the telephone.
We do.
At the times, you're either babysitting or we are babysitting, and we have to say, gotta go. How do you balance your professional mediumship with your family life?
Very difficult sometimes, but you have to, you know. My children, the Sales were actually brought up with me being a spiritualist, and they used to attend churches and everything with me anyway. My grandchildren, who have actually been isolated with me as well throughout this time, they're say a little bit noisy, but you do create that balance. You manage it. You know, if it's something you want desperately enough, you will find that time. I've actually sat and meditated with my children as well, and my grandchildren. Well, I've tried it with the little one, but she's not too keen at the moment. But yeah, it becomes part of it. It has to, you know, and the time is found. Sometimes I'm that tired, but hey, you know, it's all part and parcel, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it, but tonight we're having a party, but it's 4 different houses, and we're using that app, the house party.
Oh yeah.
There's going to be 5 of the grandsons there. My son, he's been isolated here because he sold his house just as the coronavirus came, and he was supposed to move to Milton Keynes. Now he's stuck here. Steph will be on, my wife, and my daughter and her husband. So we're all going to be in this house party, having a virtual barbecue and playing house party games.
Yeah, my daughter had one of those last week, I think.
Yeah. But I'm not going to pick on individual parts of your mediumistic life, but I do know that you've taught in Greece in your time, and the most recent one I can remember of you you went to Australia for quite a while. How did the family cope then?
Pardon? How did the family cope?
Yeah.
Well, let's put it, when I was in Australia, I think I had a phone call about 3 or 4 times a day. No, they did. I mean, it's a great deal of organisation on my part. But yeah, they did. They managed. I made sure everything was ready for them. They got on with it. They know. I mean, my husband, luckily, you've met my husband anyway, Darren.
Yeah.
And he's very, very good. He's excellent. You know, that's how I met him, through spiritualism. So he knows it's a big part of my life, and he knew it was something, you know, that I needed to do as well. So yeah, he helped. He looked after the children. He did really well alongside going to work, booked himself some holiday. Probably was glad to get rid of me for a while for the nagging, but there you are.
I mean, I think Libby's touched on this, and Tim, and we're on about how people think that being a professional medium is a glamorous
It's not
lifestyle.
easy. It's not easy. Even when you're abroad, you know, it's, you know, I mean, I was like that. I think when people said, oh, working abroad, you know, absolutely fantastic. It is. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to meet different people. But you've still got to live in this life, and with all the problems associated with it and the sorting out of those problems.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. I've always made friends with the course organisers, and two, as particular as you know, the ones in Sweden, Anders and Anki Peterson, you know, we've remained firm friends. We go on holiday together. They come here, we go there. And there is some sides of it that are nice and enjoyable, but I think it was Tim in his interview touched on it, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting at Manchester Airport or Birmingham Airport, getting the other end, hoping your lift's turned up, or you might have to catch a bus somewhere in a strange country, you know.
That's right.
And it's not always the best accommodation.
Tell me about that one. It was fine in Australia. But yeah, they don't realise you've still got things to do. I remember working at Hackney Coed many years ago, when Jean Duncan was there. And we'd have to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't go to bed. We didn't finish until 10 o'clock at night, which, I mean, the tutors do at the Arthur Findlay College as well. I should imagine that's still the same there now. It's obviously not quite so early, but, and it doesn't, even if you're feeling ill, you know, you've got to work. You've got to carry on and do it. You know, you can't just say, well, I'm going to bed. There's a lot of people you can let down doing that. So, you know, probably like most mediums, you've worked through feeling. But I've just got to come in on that though. What I do find fascinating, and I'm sure you will say this and many other mediums will say it, that sometimes you can feel very poorly, but you go out there, you know, you've got to work. It seems to go away for that moment in time when you're working.
See, I've been thinking about that. People say, oh, the spirit will take it away. I don't think the spirit will take it away. I think it's that you set a different mindset, because the spirit will can take it away. Why would they give it you back?
Precisely. Yeah, you get it back.
It's like your mindset, your professionalism kicks in, and you stop thinking about it. So there's like a shift in in consciousness, for want of.
Is it not the fact that, obviously we manipulate energies, don't we, when we work in our own energies, and that we work with the spirit world. But perhaps it's just the shifting of that. Sometimes it can just gives you that oomph to get on with it.
Could be.
The adrenaline.
You've already talked of one of the more modern pioneers of spiritualism, Jean Bassett, earlier. And you don't have to, what I want you to tell me about is somebody who's inspired you, and it doesn't have to be within spiritualism, just in your life. Who's inspired you, and it can be more than one person, the most in your life?
I have got to say here, and again, I've spoken about him to many people, and I'd been in, obviously, spiritualism for some time, and I was down Stansted, and it was the first Spirit of Youth week that was down there. I don't know whether you remember Spirit of Youth. Simon James and Brian Robertson. You know Brian?
I know them both, like lovely men.
Yeah, Brian was the one, and I've always mentioned this. He did a lecture on mindfulness, and I've never been so glued to anybody in all of my life, because everything he was saying connected with me really, really deeply.
Yeah.
And it was all about the way that we treat people, also the way people, from a child, sometimes the words have been said to us, and how we carry that. That can be just throwaway words that we wouldn't even really, looking at was a throwaway word. Oh, you're stupid. Grow up, will you? That kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
And he was doing that, and it sort of took me back a lot. And I developed, I think, from some things that have been said to me as a child, I've developed. I wasn't any good, hide away, saying sorry for everything, or didn't feel I was good enough for things. And it really connected that it is these throwaway things that we let affect us.
Yeah.
So really, I grew from that. That lecture that Brian did changed my life.
Yeah,
and
I changed my own mindset when I came into spiritualism, listening to a lot of the positive people and positive, like, I'm not saying I heard Brian's lecture, but lectures like similar. And at the age of 42, it changed my mindset completely. And thinking of some of the things that people said as a child that I used to regurgitate over and over again, I put them behind me, and I moved forward. And I think I've done better since leaving the army. If I'd had this positive mindset in the army, I'd probably got, gone a lot further than did.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they come into spiritualism, sometimes they have got a lot of these hang-ups anyway.
Yes.
And to me, spiritualism is much, much more than the mediumship, Martin. It's about connection with each other. It's beginning to know yourself. You need to know who you are as well. And you need to learn to love yourself. And that's part of the journey. That's what spiritualism is to me. And that's what our group, the soul-to-soul spiritual connections, that's why we labelled it that. It's soul-to-soul as well. It's knowing each other, knowing who we are, learning to love ourselves. And if we can love ourselves, we learn to understand others.
Yeah.
So it's so important.
If Steph was here now, I think she is, because I can hear the dogs going mad. But she'd laugh, because most mornings you hear me in the bathroom telling myself it was a pretty, but like a budgie. Just messing about. But we need sometimes to reinforce, like you say, to love yourself. Sometimes we need to reinforce that, because I've said it in some of my philosophy at times, if you don't love yourself, how can you love somebody else? Because you don't understand love if you can't love yourself. So
again, it's part of the journey within your mediumship, because if you don't understand yourself and your feelings, when you're working with your people from the spirit world who come close, how can you understand really and interact with their feelings and emotions?
Yeah, true. Now we are coming to the end, and I've asked everybody this question, and that is, if you had to give one piece of advice to a budding medium, the mediums of tomorrow, what would that piece of advice be?
One piece of advice: find a good tutor. Be yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable somewhere where you're developing, look elsewhere. Because so many people I know that have been in groups or development groups where they've been put down or decried, or it's got to be this way. If you don't feel comfortable, don't be afraid to move on. Find where you are. You've got to really listen to that gut instinct within you, and it tells you. If you don't listen to it, then that's your problem. But there's one big thing that we have to. And if you, when you're listening to somebody who's working or trying to tutor you, if they are not, if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel truthful, don't be afraid to say so, and we'll just move away from it.
No, I have to agree. And I think in my first book, I'd written one of the chapters about setting up a circle. And I sat in several circles when I set out. I was doing this every night of the week, either a circle or a service somewhere. And as I started teaching, people would say, well, I've only got a bad circle, it's better than nothing. And I don't agree, because if you're sitting in a bad circle, it might not be that it's, they might feel it's bad. The people who run it might be really nice people, but they feel it's bad. You should leave, and you can sit and develop on your own. You can sit and use media like this, which we've proved since, as I said, I've been running my home circle, like with 29 people in my home circle now. Brilliant. So I agree with Karen. If you're in a circle and it doesn't feel right, please move the circle, because your negative energy or the negative feelings you're getting will be affecting the energy in the circle. So it'll be a continuous backwards and forwards. Sometimes energies just don't work together, and that's not a failing, it's just how it is, you know. But it's your development, it's your journey, and it's got to be right for you. Yes. So that's my piece of advice. I agree completely with you, Karen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of time. We're coming to the end of On the Couch I was going to say this week then, but it's not a weekly thing. I'm trying to do 1 or 2 a week and not force feed you with them. But I've really enjoyed today with my guest, Karen, and I'd like to thank Karen for being on the couch with us today with Martin Colclough on the couch. Karen, thank you very much. Martin. Thank you. Thank you.